Welcome to this week's deep dive video. I wanted us to take a look back at 1 Samuel chapter 24 because we had a chance to talk about this a little bit on Sunday, but I wanted us to make sure we had an opportunity to go back and really look at it. You see, David has been through quite a bit already. As a boy, as a shepherd, he was loyal to his father, to his family. As a young man, this prophet of the Lord, Samuel, shows up. And out of the blue, I mean, from David's perspective, out of the blue, this prophet shows up and above all of his brothers, anoints him as king. And he's got this promise from a young age, and that has to be in the back of his mind as he goes to the battle to check on his brothers, as he goes into battle and fights Goliath, as he goes after that into battle leading men. But there's this king that's always been there. His whole life, there's been this King Saul who is serving. And something interesting about David is he doesn't seem to resent Saul being there. I know for me, if I were promised something, if I felt now that I'm due this thing and someone else had it, or their turn maybe is a way of saying it, took a little too long. A lot of times we see kids that they're maybe good at sharing for a moment or two, but after a short amount of time, they begin to see the injustice in their turn not happening yet. But we don't see this from David. Actually, we see this level of contentment that's is really hard to emulate or even understand. David is just content in serving the Lord. He's content in serving the Lord when he defeats Goliath. He's also content in serving the Lord when he comes back to town and the people are literally singing his praises. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. David's head doesn't get big because he is content in serving the Lord. And this goes through when Saul hurls a spear at David. David gets his feelings hurt. David isn't angry. David doesn't get the army together to go take down Saul. David doesn't summon his most loyal soldiers. David doesn't campaign to turn the people against Saul. David's hurt, not physically, but his heart is hurt by this man whom he has loved and served, turning on him and betraying him. And this same contentment that allowed David's heart to be hurt and not lead David into anger is the same contentment in serving the Lord that when he is in the desert, separated from his family, not in a palace that he has been promised, but in the desert, hiding in a cave, and his enemy, the one who has worked against him tirelessly, Saul, ends up in the same cave. David is now at an opportunity where he could take everything for himself, everything he's been promised, not something that he's not due. Just like when he was promised one of Saul's daughters in marriage for defeating Goliath, he didn't go in and say, I am due this thing. He said, who am I to be the king's son-in-law? Because David was content in following the Lord. And again, in the cave, he doesn't rush to take the things that God had promised him. He is content in the cave because God's there, to the point where he spares Saul's life and feels bad about cutting off a piece of his robe. And one of the hardest lessons for all of us to understand or appreciate, I spent the first portion of my week really mopey. If you came by the church this week, you got to see me really mopey. I can't stand injustice. And I can't stand when things don't make sense, when they don't click with my brain. It makes me not only irritated, but angry. David was living in a life that seemed contrary to the promise he had been given, but David was content in the cave because he was with the Lord. And that blows my mind. As I look at the story of David thus far as we've gone, I want to be like David in the cave. I want to know this world is not fair. The things that I think I'm due, the things that I think that should happen and don't, these things that make me angry. I need to learn to be content in the Lord, to worship him and find joy in him, even in the caves of my life, even when things just don't look like I know they should be, even when things are not right. We live in a world that is seldom fair and seldom just. Even our justice system often does not hold up. We live in a world that is terribly unjust and unfair. But we who are followers of Christ, we who have this unique relationship with God, have the opportunity to live like David lived, to be content even in the cave, because we are content in God. I pray that for you this week. I pray that you live like David, that as you see the unfairness of this life, and as you may be angry or sad or upset, whatever it may be, that you find your contentment and your joy in the Lord. I hope you have a great week, and I hope you join us Sunday as we continue to talk about the life of David. We're going to be all the way in 2 Samuel this week, and I hope that you're able to join us and be a part of that. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday.